Coming up next week on the 3rd of March, there are two important events. One is Kannada cinema marks its 88th anniversary. It is the release date of the first talkie in Kannada, Sati Sulochana. And it is also the date which has been formally declared, announced by the government of Karnataka as World Cinema Day. And later next month in March, Bangalore is hosting the 14th edition of International Film Festival, BIFFES. And this is the context for Osage to host its first discussion forum. And in this discussion forum, the focus will be on Kannada cinema. And in order to do that, we have two very important functionaries of, functionary would be a wrong term, people who have been studying Kannada cinema. The first and the main speaker would be N. Vidyashankar. He is a public speaker, a critic, and active participant in the growth of the film festival movement in Bangalore. He is a published author and on cinema and culture, and an authority on Copyrights Act. He is a regular presence in international festivals as attendee, as participant, and very often as a member of the jury. And interviewing Mr. Vidyashankar would be Muralidhar Khajane, who is a senior journalist who has been observing Kannada cinema very closely from its inception, and he is also a published author, a very important contribution to how Kannada cinema has grown from its roots earlier on to where it is today. So I am happy that Osage has started this forum, and as Osage intends to bring to this forum observers, monitors, scholars, people who have understood different aspects of the arts, cinema, literature, theatre, and performing arts as well. And so with this introduction, I'm very happy to announce Osage's new initiative. So let me hand you over to Muralidhar Khajane.
Thank you, Shankar. Vidyashankar ji, thank you very much for accepting our initiative. And let us, I'll straight away go into the questions. Let us take a stock. What was Kannada cinema like at the turn of the century? This is my first question. I wanted to know how exactly it's evolving in the new millennium.
Okay, what was Kannada cinema at the turn of this century, requires an understanding of what it was for the, say, 50 years before that. Now it's about 88 years, before about 50 to 60 years before. Kannada cinema, in a sense, is a tool for Kannada culture, particularly to communicate the history and culture of Karnataka to the new generations. Why I am saying is that Kannada was not, Karnataka and Kannada for that, and as a part of it, was not a homogeneous political entity till 1956. Obviously, when regions from 4 different parts, and where Kannada language was a minority language in all those 4 parts, came together, there is a need to create a kind of an abridged history for the new generation of people. in the sense that these four regions, though the common factor was speaking of Kannada, the history was slightly different. They belong to different socio-political contexts. Therefore, to bring that, Kannada cinema helped particularly between 1960 and 1980, if you look at the history of Kannada cinema, during that 20 to 30 years, Kannada cinema brought in all the, what you would call as the political characters, the characters who created this cultural context for Karnataka, like the saints of Karnataka, the social reformers of Karnataka, like I name people like Basavanna, Purandaradasa, Kanakadasa, Raghavendra Swami. All these people became part of Kannada cinema narratives. It's like similarly the Mayura Varma, the Kadamba, the Cholas, the Chalukyas, who ruled Karnataka in different parts, not necessarily the Karnataka today, were not known to people, unless you read history, you would not know them, they were Kannada kings. All these things came into Kannada cinema in the beginning of that. Before, nearly by the turn of this century, an updated history of Karnataka, both its cultural, social, and its political aspects are brought to the people through Kannada cinema. It also had the similar characteristics to the other cinemas of the world. Like, the world cinema had an entertainment part, there's an educational part, there's a sociological aspect of it, there's a psychological aspect of it. All these were also coming through this aspect of creating cinema in Karnataka. Therefore, at the turn of the century, Karnataka was creating its mainstream cinema of entertainment. It was also had created an abridged history of Karnataka, and it was also experimenting. By 70s, 80s, there is an experimentation that was going on in Karnataka. That is cinema being used as a kind of a personal expression. Like other forms of art, cinema has also this possibility of art. I would say that cinema, even though the main purpose of cinema is not art, art is one of the biggest possibilities of cinema. Therefore, that also had started in Karnataka by 70s and 80s. Therefore, Karnataka by the turn of the century had all the experimentations of using cinema as a mass entertainment, using cinema as a kind of a tool to cultural communication from one generation to another. The third aspect of it, experiments in cinema. All these were there. Therefore, that was Kannada cinema at the turn of the century. Now things changed at the turn of the century, not only for Kannada cinema, but cinema all over the world. When a digitalization happened, when there's a change, because cinema is essentially scientific innovation. Therefore, scientific innovation always has a process of change. There is a process of change was happening in cinema. Well, even if you look at even before the turn of the century, cinema changed from just a movie to the talkie, then the color came into that, then different ways of editing came, different ways of shooting came up. Therefore, a lot of things are happening technologically. In fact, when you talk of cinema, there are 4 histories we should be studying simultaneously.
You were referring to the cultural part of the Kannada cinema. I wanted to know whether Kannada cinema is different from its neighboring languages. Like Kannada cinema is essentially a cultural phenomena, where exactly it is a socio-economic and political phenomena for Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. But Malayalam, it is a different ball game altogether. How would you describe this cultural? Do you think it is a cultural assertion of Kannada or cultural phenomena?
Earlier, the context always make the creations, That's we all know in all arts. The cultural context of Karnataka, as I mentioned earlier, because there is a need in Karnataka to unify the state in terms of both culture and its history. Therefore, cinema became one of the tools for that one. That's why it remained. In fact, when we talk about Kannada cinema, we always talk about Dr. Rajkumar as its iconic character, not only as a film personality, but also it became an icon for cultural renaissance in Karnataka to some extent. Therefore, his role was only culture. He was never a socio-political character like Tamil Nadu Chief Minister. No. He was not an intellectual character like what happened in Malayalam cinema, where most of the writers, most of the intellectuals are part of the emergence of Malayalam cinema. Therefore, Malayalam cinema is essentially an intellectual phenomena, whereas Tamil cinema is a socio-political phenomena. Kannada remained a cultural phenomena. And if you look at Telugu cinema, it's, if you know the success of Telugu cinema, it is basically, it is a, what I would call it a techno-economic enterprise. Telugu cinema is basically a techno-economic enterprise. If you see even the latest films in Telugu, it is techno-economic enterprise. A lot of money is put into that, a lot of technology is put into it, and therefore there is an economic, a huge economic divergence in Telugu cinema compared to other cinemas. Even it's much bigger, sometimes even Hindi cinema, even Tamil cinema. So this is the phenomena. Kannada, because of its context, as I mentioned, when there is a unification in a political unification, there was a need for cultural unification. Therefore, the history has to be re-narrated to its people, to the next generation. That was Kannada cinema. That's why it remained as a Kannada cultural phenomena rather than taking that out.
There is a certain kind of shift we observe post 2000. That is, in 2006, we started digitally producing the films. From there to, it is 16-year-old now. Digitalization is a 16-year-old phenomenon. And lot of things has happened in the last 20 years. And the thing is, the best films have come, rather, in the of late, there are few films that created flutters in the national circuit as a multilingual, not a multilingual film, it is a dubbed film rather, but it has been called as pan-Indian film, such as KGF 1 and 2, and then Vikrant Rona, Charlie. Latest is the Kantara. It has become almost a phenomenon. Compared to other three I have mentioned, Kantara is a phenomenon. Are this commercially success and or in popular imagination? I wanted to know that one. And how would you look at their popularity and what kind of cinema do they portend for the future? Number 2, could you identify films that are not a commercial success but that deserves to be watched? That's the one. Fourth question is, would you say that we are in the midst of a paradigm shift? These are the 4 questions that follows the preamble I have set in.
I think it's a long list of questions to answer. But I think I'll put all of them together and try to answer.
That's right. Yeah.
The question is, as I mentioned earlier, cinema being a technological phenomena now, after once it is invented, it moves into the domain of technology. And there is a paradigm shift in itself in technology in the new millennium. When we say it has moved to digital, okay. Therefore, it has become part of a history of cinema as well, under its technological history. Now, once it becomes digital, it becomes more and more accessible to people because of its nature, of its technology reaching out to the people. It's already reached to the people before even it comes into cinema through mobile phones or through other. There's so many other things had come in between. VCRs had come, discs had come, so many things had come. For cinema had started reaching out to people. There were days earlier when people used to go to cinemas. In the new millennium, it's cinemas that come to the people. There is a technological shift that happened. For it became very accessible to people. Once it becomes accessible to people, the other side also is that cinema became accessible to makers also, filmmakers also. And the cinema, once people became aware that they can make cinema, they can also receive cinema through a different economic framework. Because the earlier framework was that it is a capital intensive kind of activity earlier. Now it became no more a capital intensive this one. You can make a film as an individual, you can take it to the people. Therefore, there was a shift, very clear shift in that turn of the century. Therefore, this technological history and economic history actually gave that effect. As for the content part of it, which you are referring to, what has happened to that, is that all these activities were there earlier as well. There is nothing new about it. Like if you look at just the success of all these new films in Kannada, it is not actually nothing new about it. Because the technology and economics had given them another direction now. Cinema has always been a spectacle as far as its mainstream entertainment parameter is concerned. Cinema has different parameters. One is there is an entertainment issue. Entertainment in the sense that it is not a negative term. People would go in large numbers with a common denominator is there in that man has different sensibilities. Some of the sensibilities are across the board. I mean, everybody need not be an intellectual receiver. Cognition levels are different in each person. There are cultural factors are there, but there are certain factors which is common to all people, which everybody would like to see. Therefore, that was used by cinema from its earlier days for its entertainment purposes. Therefore, this part of it was there for a long time. But how do you extend that kind of people? Now, technology gave an opportunity. In fact, this is the irony of Kannada cinema is that Kannada cinema had been, against dubbing for a long time. It thought that Kannada cinema would be, we would have to compete with other languages, and therefore it cannot go to the large audience. We will lose our market, etc. You see, the irony is that once dubbing issue was sorted out in Karnataka, Kannada cinema started getting dubbed and it became pan-India now. You see, there's the irony of it actually. This is, in fact, if you study history of cinema, there is a very interesting phenomenon. Say when a movie comes to the world in 1895, within next 6 months it comes to India. There's no issue. But when talkie comes at 1927 to world, the talkie comes to India after 4 years. That is 1931. The dilemma was this. Till 1927, cinema was pan-India. Because it became talkie, it became regional.
Yeah.
Now we had another movement, the other side movement. Now we want to become pan-India. How? You have to use the language. At the same time, you have to become pan-India. Therefore, this dubbing issue had a different impact on Kannada cinema. Now, all these cinemas are nothing new in terms of there's no shift in terms of content. This tendency to be a spectacle has always been there. If you see KGF, it is a spectacle. It is not about Kannada identity. It is not about the Kannada cinema as such. It is a cinema which has a spectacle as its background, rather than the culture, history, or the people they live in Karnataka. It is not that. It is not a Kannada identity that is going pan-India. It is not Kannada cinema that is going pan-India. It is the nature of cinema that is going pan-India. Nature of cinema could come from anywhere to India. It could come from Hollywood to Bangalore. Bangalore can go to Hollywood. That's the shift that has happened. This is basically because of its technological and economic history, rather than the cultural or artistic and intellectual. Any cultural cinema or artistic cinema has a cultural identity built into that. That is not there in any of this new cinema. Kantara is slightly different in that because it uses the cultural identity and uses the other aspects of it, like technology and this one economic, basically the economic way of putting it across, dubbing it and sending it to all and making it a kind of a Kannada identity is also a part of an universe, because all identities have some universal values. Therefore, he is using those universal values, the faith, the belief, the superstition, everything is there in that. That kind of thing Kantara has used to bring in certain universal strengths and weaknesses of a culture, not always strengths. Certain strengths and weaknesses of culture has been put into that cinema, which has taken a universal dimension, which has been going on not only in India, it could do well even outside. Because these kinds of things happen anywhere in the world. These kinds of beliefs, these kinds of local gods, these kinds of things will happen. And also, like when Ben-Hur came to India, the chariot race was shown in that film. We all enjoyed that. We all were part of that. We became part of that film. Same way, Kantara could, with his Kambada, can become a part of the American cinema, or European cinema. Anybody can see that. That is the change that has happened. And the other thing which, I think is part of your question is that once it is accessible to people, lot of India is such an ancient civilization, everybody has got a story to tell. Everybody needs to tell a story. We are all storytellers. Therefore, when it became accessible, a lot of stories started coming. The people who are not even allowed to tell, like women particularly, women directors in Karnataka in the last 20 years, Champa Shetty, Adupa, or even Kavita, many of them started telling stories using this medium. In the last 20 years, you can see them. There's a lot more filmmakers, women filmmakers all over the world telling stories who didn't access the film like that. For Kannada cinema also used that opportunity. And there is this economic history that also changed, as I mentioned earlier. This crowdfunding came in. Then individuals get pooling their money. The 4 or 5 middle class people can pool in their resources and make a film. That's what is happening. That's why there's a huge growth of Kannada cinema. I think the 300 to 400 films are, there may be other reasons, but one of the reasons is that they felt that we can make a film. And I got to tell a story. And there is a technology available. See, you can shoot this film in a flat today. It was not possible 20 years back. It would not have been so easy to do it, thing like this in 20 years. Now it is possible. But all these factors contributed to cinema in general and Kannada cinema in particular also.
There are two questions followed by your explanation. The one thing is, do you think cinema, in particularly in the context of Kannada, has been democratized? Number one. Secondly, I am speaking about the impact compared to KGF 2, Charlie, the Vikranthrona and other things. The impact of Kantara is totally different, and its impact affected more socially than other three films I have mentioned. Can you please comment on that?
Yeah, I think KGF is very clear. It's basically a spectacle. It uses certain kind of prototypes like the hero, the larger than life hero. This is a common factor in cinema even earlier also. But it became a bigger spectacle, therefore it could reach out. The other three has very specific context. Like Kantara I mentioned, it talks about the beliefs. It talks about a culture which has its distinct identification. And that's today, the politics also today, the identity politics is globally present. Obviously, that mindset is there in the world today. There is an identity politics. There is a recognition of their social uniqueness of people. Even though we are all in a cosmopolitan city, all of us take pride in our separate identities, separate linguistic culture, separate even caste cultures in India. And that's a very controversial part of it. But still, all these kinds of identities are coming into the fore. And this Kantara to that extent brings all those elements, question of faith, belief, in fact the colors you can use in cinema. But I was talking about the Manipur cinema for that matter. Look at the colors that they can bring into that. They're completely different to them, the kind of costumes they wear, the kind of things that happen in Kantara, everything is different, at the same time it is common. Everything says that there is an identity for everybody, at the same time this identity has to merge into something. That is the today's politics. We are trying to talk about cultural nationalism at the same time. And also, we also say that we are a country of diversity and different. But cultural this nationalism is very strongly felt today. That is the, I wouldn't say contradiction, that is the simultaneous things that happen in a society. It exists together. And that is the present mindset. Kantara, brought it to that in a common forum, a larger mass media, therefore it worked. Whereas Charlie is basically a kind of a middle class that's also growing. With the growing middle class, we have a kind of relationships we develop with certain things, which we want to keep it, which we want to show it as some kind of a natural. There's something, pets, there's something very, this kind of contradiction is there.
It's also a phenomenon of India.
We, at the one time, we know that middle class, they say that nature should be kept as it is. At the other time, we want to put nature into very orderly things. Those things are there in Charlie. That actually worked in that. Other cinema you mentioned is, I think, Vikranthrona.
Yeah.
Does a kind of a spectacle. It uses that kind of spectacle. Cinema, that characteristic of cinema is there. Cinema from the beginning itself has this tendency to look at as a spectacular thing. From 1915, BIFFES in America started that. That still continues. Cinema has that characteristic of being a spectacle. That's one universal phenomenon that attracts people to cinema.